last chapter, when we were talking about this, we all said it, right? We were like, what do you mean we have to save Yuta's life? What we did find out is that it led to absolutely nothing. It's just Yuta is good to go, no consequences whatsoever. I guess it is the end of the series. I didn't expect Gege to have us lock into any crazy rituals or stakes at the very end of the series. It just doesn't seem like Gege to do that, especially with how he's been writing lately. He's kind of just tying all the knots and making sure everything is case closed. Are we ever going to discuss if Japan is going to respond to all of the countries invading them and, you know, potentially breaking the Geneva Convention? I'm starting to think that Gege is going to act like, because the Culling Games had the entire country in a blackout phase where so much was going on, that the other countries were able to, like, get away with invading the barriers. That's the only conclusion I can think of for the entire military idea to not have real world, just genuine catastrophic consequences. Like, say what you will about how strong Sukuna was, say what you will about how strong Orame and Yuta even is, or Yuta could be now that he's back in his own body. Nuclear weapons sent down on Japan in all angles from multiple countries, probably not a good way for those sorcerers to handle anything, let alone if Japan responds. Vice versa, we get into a whole nuclear war. Yeah, this could be very bad, but we're gonna tie everything up in a nice, neat bow. So what do we have to worry about? I hope Gege at least addresses what the hell happened to the entire country, because we still don't know what the after effects of the Culling Game are. We just went right from the end of the Culling Game to, all right, everyone's happy, we're good. The entire world just watched a live stream battle of Jujutsu sorcerers fight to the death, but there were no actual consequences whatsoever to anything. One of the most important things that we got is at least we did get some kind of explanation for how Yuta did survive this. According to Yuta, Rika was using reverse curse technique the entire time on his dead body, basically just to keep his body in like a state of limbo, almost like with what they did, I mean, basically confirmed with Nobara, right? They kept him in a suspended state of reanimation until Yuta was able to completely reconvene with his own body. The one thing that Mei brings up is something that I brought up from the very beginning, which was a lot of people had issues with Yuta not being able to handle the domain expansion burnout, but Kenjaku was somehow able to handle the domain expansion burnout. And I guess Mei explains it in the best way possible, is something like that really doesn't require an in-depth explanation. Would it be nice if Kenjaku was still alive and we were able to figure out how he was able to manage all these different curse techniques and everything like that? Yes. But if the series is ending in 3 chapters, that's the same kind of unnecessary yapping that a lot of people are claiming the new Shadow style is, right? At the very least, it makes sense that Kenjaku, who has literally used the technique for 1,000 years and transferred to multiple different bodies and all of these different things, would have figured out a way to not only advert domain expansion cooldown, but be able to keep and hold on to different barriers, whether it be through binding vows, barrier techniques, as Mei kind of assumes, or Kusakabe assumes, right? Like, I don't think, like, that's kind of like Star Wars midichlorians, right? Like, I don't think we need to go in depth. It's pretty easy to assume Kenjaku 1,000 years ago is just able to, you know, use the technique much better than someone who just got the curse technique. Which, speaking of Kenjaku, we move directly into what feels like Gege kind of addressing the direct concerns of the audience, as in regards to like some of the plans that they may have chosen to go about and everything like that. Like, you have Maki here basically saying that everything is Yuta's fault, because if Yuta had showed up to the battle sooner, then they wouldn't have had to worry about anything. Maki feels like she should have went out to go against Kenjaku instead of Yuta, which is a genuine criticism you've seen plenty of people take. So fair to bring that up at the very least. You also have Maki with the Executioner's Sword plan. You have using the curse speech earlier, everything like that. And whether you feel these are reasonable excuses or not, I think they're still important to at least acknowledge that Gege is at least trying to make sense of why the plan went the way that it did, right? You know, Todo, for one, wasn't able to boogie woogie Maki, therefore her surprise attack might not have worked against Kenjaku. You also have the fact that Maki taking on all of the different curse spirits that were going to erupt from Kenjaku as opposed to Yuta and Rika themselves, probably a much better way to go. makes sense. They discuss even more about how curse speech is technically in use completely while on a voice recorder, which I think is a pretty important distinction, right? I think that's something very important to bring up. Inumaki basically confirms here that curse speech can only be used once. If it gets recorded, that means Inumaki is on a forever curse speech. He's continuously using it until that curse speech is played on the voice recorder. So they couldn't use more than one voice recorder. That explains that. It's also explained that, which is kind of what a lot of us figured, if curse speech was used at any other point in time, Sukuna might have been too strong, and that literally would have killed Inumaki with the feedback. Because we even see with Inumaki getting hit by the feedback, when it did, he still, like, his throat was, like, almost obliterated. One of the biggest reveals, which was the return of Higuruma Hiromi. It is revealed that somehow, some way, he was able to survive, which even Kusakabe mentions is kind of unreal. If you see anyone talk bad about Higuruma coming back, or you ever see anyone use Higuruma's revival as an excuse to say Disney Kaisen or anything like that, you know that's not a true fan. You can immediately write them off right away, because anyone in the Jujutsu Kaisen community knows Higuruma is the GOAT, and we will accept any argument necessary for him to return to the series. We do not care. Higuruma can come back as much as possible. I have the same feelings about Higuruma as I have for Mahito. If Mahito found some way to just finagle his way back into the story, I'm all about that, and I'm not gonna complain. We get everyone's perspective on what happened, which I think is interesting. That's one thing to see, is like, this is a chapter that we needed. As much as everyone said that we didn't need this chapter was lame, I think this was one of the most important chapters that we could have gotten. That of everyone meeting up and discussing everything that happened, you know? Like, all right, the match is over. Now everyone gets to talk shit, and it's like, hey, you did this. Hey, you did this. It's like teamwork. This is like this is what real teams do. Anyone that played sports or anything like that knows this is the kind of shit that goes on after the game. People be talking, but it's the kind of shit that makes you better, because sometimes you need your friends to talk shit to you. You need your friends to tell you where you fucked up. For some reason, that resulted in everyone talking shit on Yuta. It was like one of the biggest Yuta roasting sessions. They roast him over Miguel and LaRue taking too long to show up. If you really think about it, is a pretty valid concern. A very valid concern to say. Yuta tries to play it off, and I do think it's crazy, as many people have mentioned. Literally, no one brings up Kashimo whatsoever. They completely don't even say, oh man, that reincarnated guy, it's sad he went, or oh geez. Hikari doesn't even remember Kashimo or say, hey, at least, well, Kashimo didn't really do anything, to be fair. So we kind of go through everyone's kind of regrets of the situation. Todo regrets not being able to save Choso. Kirara tells Todo not to think about that. Ino actually admits that Wee was the one that had to save Ino, because Todo wasn't able to save Ino either, so it's, he's lucky to still be alive. Yuji reveals that, if Choso didn't die, Yuji would have died. And then like I said, we do get the page of Miwa and everybody discussing their regrets. The GOAT Momo Nishimiya reveals that she was Plan Z all along. Which, no, she just reveals that she couldn't do anything, which, granted, it's glad that Momo didn't jump into the fight. What the hell was Momo gonna do, of all fucking people? You know what I mean? Miwa admits that she wasn't even sure if Maki was gonna survive when she was used as the marker to save her and Todo from the domain expansion. Which, fair. Honestly, we were kind of unsure about that, too. That would have been such an unceremonious way for Maki to die, but yeah. Kari admits that he wishes he could have fought Sukuna, but Arame was too damn strong, which just feels like a middle finger from Gege. Show us the fight. You could have showed us one chapter. That's all we needed, and you didn't give it to us. Why, Gege? You just needed to give us one chapter. Nobara admits that, they were asleep until the very end. Wee reveals I was the true MVP, which, to be fair, if you really think about it, the soul swap was big time. Being able to teleport dead bodies in and out was big time, which means because we were able to save people from the field, we were even able to save Higuruma, of all people, from death, which is utterly insane. We were able to save Kusakabe, who got taken out. We were able to save everyone who got taken out by Sukuna, bring them out to Shoko. get them reverse curse technique, then back into the fray. Kusakabe's the only one who's like, hey, you know, not for nothing. Like, if you want to say no one did anything, we can call Mei out for literally doing nothing. She threw a bird strike here and there, and that was it. True to her character. She's like, oh, yeah, you know, the reason why I didn't do that is because my life is priceless. Why the hell would I jump into battle with Sukuna? That's kind of stupid. You guys can do that. You know, even if you guys lost, I would just live in the world that Sukuna created and do my best to make money in that situation. This is where we shift focus of the chapter for the last half, in which we talk about the new Shadow Style school and everything in regards to that. Kusakabe Atsuya is now the new head of the Shadow School, which means he was able to go about all of the ridiculous binding vows that were in place, which the new Shadow School is, in my opinion, one of the most interesting portions of the entire chapter. It legitimately is. The idea of the new Shadow Style being something that was secretive, it was hidden from society and only shared between members of a quote-unquote clan, or just dispersed through teachings. Like, even people like Todo only learned it because he saw people like Yuki Sakumo. It started off as something nice. Capitalism, huh? It was now controlled by an elite group of people, eventually becoming one person that was basically running a Ponzi scheme, a pyramid scheme, divvying out the information of the new Shadow Style technique, which, as Mei even correctly mentions, is a literal cornerstone, a necessity for sorcerers that don't have techniques. If you don't have a technique like Miwa, Simple Domain is the best option you have. If you don't have a technique like Kusakabe, Simple Domain is your shit. They hold that against people by inviting them into unfair binding vows, which Kusakabe confirms are, you know, the worst and egregious one is sapping the lifespan. You also have you need to mobilize at any point the head needs you. So at any point in time, as we find out later, the head would be able to mobilize an entire army and demand they do something and order them to do something, even though they don't want to do it. It's in their binding vows, and we know we don't want to break binding vows, despite us never finding out what happens if you break a binding vow. You don't want to do it. No one wants to be the first person, right? The rest of the chapter, as I mentioned, is the flashback of Mei turning Kusakabe into the head. She kills the original head, and then the main goal at the end of this, in my opinion, is not to show a plot point that, hey, you know, here's this thrown in, we could have explored this, but we're not going to explore this, so I'm just writing this in at the end. I think it's to, more importantly, just prove that this is it. There's no underlying secret society like the new Shadow School. As Mei mentions later, the Zenin clan is taken out, essentially completely annihilated by Maki. The Kamo clan was made up of mostly the higher-ups. They were the ones that mostly controlled the conservative party of Jujutsu Society. That and, you know, some other members, the Zenin clan members. So all the Zenin clan members are dead. All the Kamo clan members that were in the higher-ups are dead. The heir of the Kamo clan, Kamo Noritoshi, moved away with the rest of his family. So the Kamo clan is essentially done for. They have no political power anymore, and if they do, there's no one who's in a correct position to wield that power. The Gojo clan is done because Gojo clan was a one-man show for the most part, and Gojo is dead now. You know, I'm sure there's other people in his family. There's other, you know, probably political leaders or other that, but the main political powerhouse of the Gojo clan, the reason why they were a major head is because of the Six Eyes, the Limitless. Now, the Six Eyes, of course, based off of what Tengen explained to us, have to come back in some way, shape, or form. A new Six Eyes user will be born. We get this small bit where Mei learned from Tengen, supposedly, that the new Shadow Style was planning to usurp the three great clans and usurp Jujutsu Society and become the new dominant force. Mei snuffs that out, and now Kusakabe is the new Shadow Style head. Megami and Maki basically control the Zenin clan. If Kamo Noritoshi decides to ever come back, he would be the Kamo clan, and they basically have full blessings and backing of what I would imagine would be the Gojo clan. So I really do think the point of this chapter is to emphasize that everyone in this room that we have here is it. What is next? What are we going to do with this new society? And I think that's what the end of the chapter signifies, right?